Hello and welcome to Better Than Art School. This is a short lecture on construction drawing. So construction drawing, there's a lot of techniques and tips that I have for you, but let's just talk about drawing in general for a second. So drawing is basically trying to understand the visual world as we see it through recreating it in a two-dimensional form. And so a lot of what you're doing when you're drawing from life, and I'm mostly talking about drawing from life, is you're trying to understand how space works. You're trying to understand how objects move through space, how objects relate to each other in space. And so on our left here we have round objects. These are called ellipses. It's just a circle as seen through space. And then we have rectilinear objects, square objects on our right. And what happens with an ellipse is basically if you hold something like this can, and you hold it to where the camera is pretty much on the same level as it. It looks like it flattens off. As you move it down, you can see into it. If you move it up, you can see into it. And that's true no matter what the shape of the container is. It doesn't matter if it has a bunch of bells and whistles in the creation of the container. The ellipses inside will open and close relative to your eye level every time. That's just the way ellipses work. So it's like this deeper strata of reality. And then squares, boxes like we have on our right, the basic thing about a box is that this plane here, this line here, should always be a little longer than this line here because this is closer to you. So we're seeing kind of inside the box. This line here should be a little taller than this line, okay? And if it's not, you're flattening, you're collapsing space. You're saying that there's no space here, that these lines are somehow the same. So always remember that. You're always drawing space. You're always trying to draw things through space and the way space affects them. There's no way to see objects free of these effects, okay? If you see them free of these effects, that means that you're seeing them in a diagram form. But if you're trying to draw them as they sit in real life, then you have to use these, you have to kind of get your spatial thinking going. Okay, so this is a construction drawing demo I did for a previous drawing class, and the technique that I advocate here is that you start the drawing with a color pencil, like say red or orange, yellow if you can see it, if that's not too light, and you try to construct the objects. You do like the symmetry lines and the ellipses, and you try to construct the objects with the color pencils, then you go back over them and you do the more detail work with regular drawing pencils. And that's a technique that I think will help you understand construction drawing better. So I advocate trying that out. Okay, so construction drawing is basically you're building things from the inside out. If you've ever seen the way a Pixar movie is made, they'll take, when they're making the characters, they have this like grid that's underlying the characters, and they'll put texture maps on top of that. And that's actually just how we draw. That's just how professional drawers have been drawing forever. You draw a symmetry line, you draw the little ellipses inside of a bottle if you're drawing a bottle, and you build it out. Okay, that's how you do it. Okay, so this is an almost finished drawing that I did kind of a long time ago, but I wanted to show it because in the later stages of a drawing, you don't see all this stuff. And especially in a totally finished drawing, you're not going to see all the lines that constructed it. Those lines become part of the value structure, or they get erased. And so people think that the drawing just looked like this the whole time. It just, started from a section and came out like that. But actually, you construct stuff and then you draw on top of it. Okay. So this is kind of what a drawing might look like early in its stages. You're moving things around, you're going, oops, it's really over here, and then you're drawing lines down the middle, you're trying to round stuff out, trying to figure out the symmetry. There's some artists like Giacometti here or Leonardo da Vinci here who use construction drawing in their finished drawings. You can see the techniques. Like here he's trying to line up facial features with lines. Like this guy didn't have tattoos of lines on his face. He's actually, Leonardo's using these construction lines to try to understand the facial proportions. Okay, so construction drawing is good for addressing two of the main problems that beginning artists have when they start to draw. And one is called object tunnel vision, where they get obsessed with drawing one thing and detailing it, making it perfect, and they lose sight of the whole. They lose sight of the relationships of the drawing. Even if it's one thing, like drawing a face, you might get obsessed with the lips and forget to keep comparing it to the eyes and the nose, for instance. And another really common issue that I see in my students is isolating through outlining. You put these heavy outlines around things, and then it's like making little cages for your eyes. So these are two things that if you draw with construction drawing, you will not have these particular problems. Okay, so now onto the meat. This is all kind of sizzle, and now here's the steak. So here's some techniques in construction drawing. If a real easy way to think about this is you're drawing lines that aren't in nature, but they help you understand nature. So plumb lines, you drop lines down, you pull lines across, you might do a diagonal plumb line. You're trying to line things up. You're trying to figure out how does this apple, how does it compare to the pitcher? Where is the spout of the pitcher? How tall is the apple compared to the handle of the pitcher? That's plumb lines. You should use a lot of them. You're trying to figure out relative heights of things, relative distance of things. All those issues can get really thorny unless you have a technique, and plumb lines are a really good technique. Okay, another one is cross contour lines. Some cross contours are in nature, like my sleeve. The circle, the sleeve goes around my arm, but most of the time you have to draw them and they're not there. And what this does is it helps you build it out, helps you understand the volume, helps you understand the internal symmetries, and especially foreshortening. One of the hardest things in drawing is like my hands coming out at you like this. Drawing foreshortening is really, really difficult, okay? But the cross contour lines can help you do that. That's why Spider-Man has all these little cross contour lines. It helps him look more 3D. Carried lines. So a carried line, if you go along here, so instead of going like this, go like this. And every time the contour changes, you address it with a slightly different angle. And then you get a much more, like a much more articulated view of the contour. That's what a carried line helps you do. So they can go a little out further than the contour itself, but they help you kind of shape the object. Okay, symmetry lines. So anytime you're drawing something symmetrical, whether it's a bottle or a cup or a human face or an animal, I mean, a lot of what we draw are symmetrical objects. So it's good, or even semi-symmetrical, like the cup here. You drop a line down the middle and you try to mirror the two sides off against each other. That's what a symmetry line helps you do. Okay, so here's some quick, this is kind of the philosophy of construction drawing. Just relax. Don't worry about how the drawing looks throughout the whole process. Remember, it's gonna, if you want to think of it one way, when you do construction drawing, it's kind of like the way a building looks when it's going up. There's scaffolding everywhere, there's cranes, there's people hitting hammers and jackhammers and all this kind of stuff. And so it doesn't look the same in process as it does when it's finished. And so just remember that. Don't think it's going to look really beautiful and light and free the whole time. It's going to look kind of messy for a while, but then it'll get there. So keep your lines provisional. Don't assume that you know where something is. Don't just, when people who've never drawn before, that or just started drawing, they'll draw an outline as if they're going to get it right the first time. You're not going to get it right the first time. Okay, just let that thought leave your head. Just draw provisionally. Draw like you don't know exactly yet. You're trying to figure it out. Draw with your arm, not your wrist. That's a huge one, okay? If you draw with your wrist, you're going to get these little scratchy lines everywhere. If you get your arm into the mix, you use your arm as much as possible and try holding the pencil in different ways, then you'll just draw better. This is the meat of the lecture, the plumb lines, the cross contour lines, carried lines. They're lines other than outlines or lines that you see in nature or that you think you see in nature. They're lines that help you understand nature. Don't go into rendering mode. So just don't start detailing. Don't let that part of that module of your brain kick in. Actually just keep comparing things and trying to figure out the symmetry. That will help you more. And then there's this word Kenntnis. It's a German word. It means learning from direct experience. Drawing is learning from direct experience. You don't know how something is. You have to draw to figure it out. Okay, so that's a way to think of it. Is it searching and finding and learning as you're drawing. It's learning about reality. Okay, so the bumper sticker version of this lecture is process not product, scaffolds not outlines, and there's a bunny with some pigs. I will see you all next time.